In this video, we will talk about the basics of viewerStateTemplate, which can be accessed via the viewerState, and this is kind of at the bottom of the bottom function of the viewerState, which is for us to bind some interactive elements to our HDA, something like handles, menus, and all of that. So in this video, we'll go through this automatic code that is generated and we're going to add some static handle for it as a beginning, and also talk about the hotkeys and how can we add some hotkeys. So at the end of it, you should know more about your state templates, how they work, and what all of this code mean, and how can we add some stuff to it. In no way this is all of it. In next video is probably going to be more of it, but at the end of it, we should have basically a handle that's going to translate, which is going to control the parameter on our HDA, and we also set up the hotkey for us to show or hide the handle on it. So that should be pretty interesting stuff. So let's get to it. Let's start by creating our empty viewer state. So I'm just going to press on new, and just everything going to be blank and accept, basically override viewer state. You'll notice that it's automatically going to unload our viewer state and load the new one. So you can actually keep any of these names the same. So that's actually I'm going to talk about. Let's talk about this one first. So basically you can see that every time we press apply, it's basically going to unload and load the viewer state again. So let's actually take a look at this. In previous video where we actually added extra sections in source code, you can see there's besides the viewer state module that we can edit, like in previous video, you can actually there's also viewer state uninstall and install. So let's actually open it now. So let's open up uninstall. Let's take a look at it. You can see it's basically in one line kinda. We are importing viewerState.utils module, and then we give it from list to none, and then basically call a function from it. So let's actually open up this Python file, because it's actually pretty important, because inside here there's actually lots of stuff that we can actually we cannot get from the Houdini help. So, and what I'm going to do is actually open up the actual viewerState module. So we have both this. You can see that we are also the same module is also imported inside our main Python state, our main viewer state. So let's actually open up this viewer state utils. So the easiest ways what we can do is just find it inside your computer, but actually what we can do is actually find this inside here. So what we can do is actually well, let's do this like, let's just copy this one, let's import it. Let's actually, from viewer state, let's import utils, and then basically went to help. Basically now we called on that module help, and you will see that this file is actually located inside here. So just go ahead, copy it, and find it on your PC, and then let's take a look at it. Let's go ahead and find this unregistered by state embedded. So here it is, and it's actually a very simple function. So all we have to do is we do some checks whether the UI is available. Let's take a look at it. So the UI module is not available in command line or in mplay. So basically make sure that we are inside our UI, that UI is actually available. So, and then we basically run a very simple node type, which is actually passed along here, and node type is inside our unregistered is actually as a quarks type. So I talked about in my previous video also about this one, about the quarks, basically a dictionary that's automatically for us given so that we can work with the code more easily. So basically we pass the type of this node, then we just unregister it with this one. So actually let's actually unregister with the command line. So we know our default state is test binding 1.1, 1.0. So there it is. Let's actually unload it without using this one, but by command line. So all we really need to do is this, then we have to get the type, just like basically this is the basically we have given the equivalent of the Quark's type dictionary entry inside here, and all you have to do is copy all of these, get the definition, sections, and the default state. 2 dots, that's not good, like that. You can see, and then we also read the content. And remember, this content is actually just a string of the name of the default state. So we could just basically copy this one. Well, it's going to work either way, so let's take a look at it. So obviously this is the way for us to do it, so that every time we change something inside, when we assign a new viewer state, so that this would automatically take the correct string. But at the end of the day, this is just a string, so we could just pass a string. So actually, let's actually print out this one, contents. You can see it's basically just a string name of our viewer state, like here. And we could just who.ui.unregister viewer state, and let's actually pass the string to it, so that we don't have to rewrite it. So just copy it, paste it. So now let's take a look at, so there it is, our bindings 101, 100, enter it. You can see it's gone now. We basically did the same thing as this one inside here. The only difference is that inside here we basically do everything in one line. We import it, we import the package, import the module utils, and then we also call the function from it, so inside here. And this from list is basically given, this is the optional argument for this import function, which basically makes sure that we actually select import the utils already. So basically it's going to import the very right module inside here, not only the viewer state. So if you take a look at on the internet, it's very much a Python thing. It's not like a Houdini specific, so it's just a Python thing. So, and this is, we actually did use it inside Wrangle. So in my previous my previous videos, we used this import in one line as actually a callback inside buttons. You can see we are importing, and then we basically do the same thing, only from my custom module called the delete all params. And now let's get to the main topic of this video, which is the Python state bindings. And let's go ahead, and in interactive I actually deleted my Python state, cleared up all of these viewer states, so we can start from the beginning. And let's just create a new Python viewer state, and let's just make sure the name of it, I just go to test bindings 1.0, and the label I'm going to make it maybe my PC name, and call it bindings, and make sure it's blank inside here, and that's it. So you just want to blank, basically this viewer state not going to do anything, but obviously for all of these still needs to have a viewer state template. And so you can see once we apply it, you will see that it's basically going to automatically add our viewer state for our viewer state browser, this Python binding that we just created. And you will notice that if you press on the edit, you'll see that this is basically going to open up the type properties for our HDA. So this binding is now lives inside our HDA. So we could create a Python file, and basically this viewer state would be of the HDA. It would be basically a separate file on disk. We could do that also if you maybe have like more generalized Python state, which you could maybe use for multiple HDAs. But for us, this code is going to live here, so and this is where we're going to edit. So let's begin by actually take a look at what's actually changing and what every line. Let's go through every line of these and take a look at it. So I'm going to actually open up the code inside my external editor, so that we can start looking at it with more. So all of this is just the automatically generated text. We don't really need it even. You can see it's basically a triple quotes. So this is just a string for us to know what we just created. But with this state type name is just so first of all, when we created this Python state, it automatically went to the node And for the default state, basically wrote in this name of the Python state that we just created, which is this unique name of the Python state, which is testing bindings 1.0. So this is just a label, and the type is actually the thing that matters. So the type actually cannot be a duplicate name for it. But this is just a label, and we can create with the same label however many viewer states you want. But obviously it's probably not preferred. So only thing that this line does is basically goes to the sections of our HDA and picks up the name of this Python state, type of our Python state, basically a unique name for our viewer state. After this, it's just a label. Label doesn't really matter for now since it's mass binding, but I don't think actually anything would actually happen if we would change it and something. So let's actually change it. So let's say instead of actually, I think it would actually create another one of these Python states. So let's take a look at it. So I'm just going to call it bindings 2. Let's actually take a look at it. So you see, okay, it's basically the binding is the viewer state is the same, but it basically updated the name of it. So you see, it didn't create a duplicate of it. Now it's just the bindings 2. So you'll see that every time since we took a look at the source code, you can see that every time this updates, it actually reloads and unloads and reloads the viewer state. So that's why it's actually updates. So okay, so that's that. So we got our unique name, the unique label, actually not the unique, just a label. And then all we have to do is also give the SOP that basically the category of the viewer state. So, and once you get all of these 3 variables, we package them all up inside viewerStateTemplate, and we get the viewerStateTemplate class, viewerStateTemplate class instance, which is responsible for all the implementation of the menus, handles, hotkeys, selections, and all of that. So you will see underneath there's a bunch of methods that we can run, but not all of them are for the SOPs. So we will take a look at some of the more cooler for the SOP. So something like a menu and selectors and all of that. So that's that. But you will see that there's one more thing that's done. First of all, there's a factory, which basically you'll see, and as an argument is given this class. So basically, for this viewer state, we actually give this class that were in the previous videos where we did all of the interaction inside the viewport. We basically pass this class inside here, so it registers with the viewer state template. So that's obligatory, but this bind. And after there's also icon. So this icon is just looking for this node and basically gets the image of the icon of this node and pastes it inside here. You will see that basically also the box inside in this one. So if we go ahead and change this one, it's also going to update inside there. So I don't think you even need it. So let's take a look at it. You can see when I deleted it, it went back to the Python. I guess the default ones. This icon is when we actually create the viewer state without the HDA inside it. So basically just a Python file, not the viewer state implemented inside HDA. And now let's just say I want for my digital asset to have a basic transform handle added to it. So how can we go about it? So let's go to the help, and underneath the Python state handles, it describes the 2 kinds of handles. The static handles, which is that supports simple one-to-one mapping to the parameter. So let's say on our HDA there's going to be a transform node, which goes to just control, basically just a vector that's going to control the movement of any of our objects inside it, and we just basically mapped it to the handle. And this is static handle, and dynamic is a little bit different, which is dynamic handle which decides the callback functions how to change the handle effect parameters on a node. So this is going to be a little bit more advanced, so let's leave that for maybe another video. But let's just copy this sample code and paste inside and let's basically register a new viewer state in Houdini. But for that, let's take a look at the code itself. You will notice that it's basically the same code as a default code that's actually created when we create our HDA viewer state template. The only really difference is the kind of a setup for it. So in here, when we have created our viewer state, in here, it's actually going to create a function createViewerStateTemplate. But in here, it's just a class, just like inside here. And you can see that we create a template outside the class that we create, and we don't create another function createViewerState. Basically, we just do everything inside here, and then we just who.ui register viewer state, then template. But since this is a function inside here, we have to also return something from this function, so we return the template. So basically the same thing happens inside here. Here it's only a little bit different. And another thing that will be noted that this, when we just, well, for the testing purposes, it doesn't really matter. When we just apply it, oh, actually I already created, so let's actually unload the, so let's unload it. So Python measure file, unload selected state, and let's apply it again. So now we register it again. Let's take a look, and you can see that there's actually no source for it. So you can't really edit it anymore. Let's say for our viewer state that we created inside HDA, we can go ahead here and edit it. It's basically going to open up the type properties for our HDA. You see, but since we are just testing it out with this Python source, it's basically just registered it, but we can't really edit it. So this is just for the testing purposes. But you will see that for these sessions for the Houdini, let's delete this one. Let's accept it. Now that we have registered, let's actually test it out. Let's actually create another HDA. So create digital asset. If you do not want to actually create a digital asset on disk, what you can do is actually just create this dummy HDA on the file. Only thing you have to do is in say library, just write inside that it's embedded. There you go. So basically it's going to just embed the HDA on this heap file. So if it's basically just so it doesn't, since we won't really use it, so it doesn't lay around in our user folders and all of that. So let's just get two vector files on it, like here. So now we have two parameters that these handles are actually going to change. And actually, well, we could actually, well, let's do that with our real HDA. But for this one, just let's control the two parameters. And if you take a look at the syntax of it, let's go back inside here. This basically, it registers two templates, bindHandleStatic, staticHandle, and it's called, basically there's a startX and tx. So you'll notice it's a list of tuples. So startX is actually the name of our parameter, and tx, you said that these are both the same. So this is because for every handle, these things that we can actually control for every handle are the same. So these are going to be the same. So let's take a look at it. This basically represents all of the three axes on our handles. So let's actually assign these handles. So let's go to the one thing you'll notice that it actually has to match the names of it, so we cannot leave it as a new parameter. So let's take a look at start. Basically it should be start, and it should be end, and that's it. Since it's a tuple, it's basically going to add the axis x, y, and z at the end of it automatically, and that's it. So now we have our start and end, and let's actually assign our viewer state to it. So go to the default state, and the viewer state name was Python measure. Copy it, paste inside default state, apply it, and that's it. You'll see that in here we do not have any script for our Python state. So that would be on viewer state, because we are basically just referencing the external viewer state. So that's it. Let's take a look at it. Let's press enter. And you will see we have two handles. And each one of these, as long as these parameters match, they're basically just going to change the we can move them around like that. And now let's add some handles to our actual HDA. So let's go to the type properties. And another way we can actually add handles are through the handles tab on interactive. So let's actually go ahead and let's actually put down a rotate handle. You'll see these are basically all of the things that we can actually control with the rotate handle. You will see that actually there's also the transform handle for this rotate handle too. So let's try out by assigning it by using the rotate and assigning a transform to it. So in my HDA, I basically just put down a transform node, and I'm just referencing the translate on top of the HDA. So let's assign this translate to our TX, TY, and TZ. So you will see that these are basically the names of the parameter the handle uses, and we can assign the whatever we want. And if you go in the drop-down menu, you will see all of our basically parameters on top of the HDA that we can assign to. So we just, it's if you are very fast and just want to assign it, this is definitely a faster way for us to assign a handle to our HDA. So just assign the parameters to the right axis, apply it, let's enter it. You'll see, even though this is a rotate, there's actually also the transform handle for it. And you will see, you're now basically using the translate on it. So let's try out the rotate ones. So let's actually, if in transform parameters, let's get our rotate handle also. So this is the only thing that this handle is going to do. It just changed the parameters. We still have to correctly set up these parameters so that they actually reference some of these rotate handles and all that. So let's go back to the parameters. Let's assign to the rotate. So probably RX is going to be. Let's probably have to exit it and so that it actually updates. So for the rotate, that's wrong. Rotate X, Y, and Z. That's it. You see now we have basically a move and also the rotate handle assigned to the HDA. And if you're not sure what some of these do, actually we can if you put down a transform and go to the type property, it's probably a good guess what these actually going to change. So if you're not sure that PX, PY, and PZ is basically, it's probably a pivot translate for it. So yeah, so you just assign the pivot translate to it so that it pivots around the not the center of it or whatever you want it so to. So this is the one way we can actually assign it. And now let's do the same thing by adding the handle, but through our viewer state code. So let's make sure that you have deleted everything set here, applied, and let's go to our code and let's add it through here. So right before we return the template, let's write in template dot so bind, that would be the handle static. And if you go to the help, you will see it's basically the handle type, the name, and then the bindings. And so we know that its name was from here. We know that it's basically all lowercase translate. That's wrong. So it's going to be a translate. So the name of it we will give just something that I will recognize. And now let's give it the binding. So it's pretty simple. So you will see that this is basically the parameter inside here, and this is actual parameter that a handle gonna recognize from here. So let's take a look at it. So inside here there's just basically any of these. Basically the second one has to be any of these. So kind of a handle's internal parameters. Then we bind them to our HDA parameters. So let's do that. So I know that my parameters for the tuple was a foo. So let's do that. So go ahead and create a list with square brackets, and in square brackets all we have to do is make a tuples of, so it's going to be a foo x, and the parameter for the actual would be tx. So this would be the parameter for the translate, internal name for translate handle. So it's going to copy it, paste it, copy it again, and just change it to z, y, and y, something like this. And now let's take a look at the result. Let's press enter. You see we have our handle, and what's interesting is if you go to the type properties, you'll see that it actually says that name of our handle and that it's logged by viewerState, so you actually cannot even delete it since it's coming from this viewerStateTemplate. So that's that. But what's cool about this, we don't even need all of three of these axes. So let's say for each day we only want the x-axis. So let's just delete the two axes. Let's take a look at it. So you can see now only thing we have is the x-axis. And now let's say we like our viewerState, but let's say we want to kind of see the overview of it, and maybe we want to hide some of these handles. So how can we actually hide handles? So let's take a look at it. So for that we actually have to go to our state class and add some of the methods that are going to be recognized by Houdini. So, and this method is going to be in my previous video that I'm actually going to, I think I'm gonna link it in description. We talked about the def on mouse event. And let's just self and quarks. And let's actually print out the quarks. Let's take a look at it. So you'll see that we get a bunch of useful information from this quark dictionary, and one of them are actually the many buttons that we can press inside the viewer state. But you will notice that many of these actually do not work because, well, this updates only on a mouse event, which is basically just when we move around our mouse. So it's not very useful for us to, let's say, click on maybe B button. It actually doesn't really, so there's a key string which should theoretically update the string value of the key that we just pressed. You'll see that it actually doesn't update it on a key string. It actually does nothing when we press any of the buttons. So there's actually a better way. So it doesn't really make sense for us to use on mouse event a method for us to assign some of the hotkeys for some of the actions you want to change. So we actually have to use another method which is called onKey event. So let's go ahead and let's not use the onMouse event, but let's use onKey event. And let's self and if you're confused about any of these, just go ahead and go watch the first part of it. Let's print out our quarks. So you'll see now we have basically you can say basically the same dictionary, but it's actually going to update now correctly. So let's say enter my viewer state, and as I press N, you'll see it's going to basically update my value for my dictionary of this key string method. So let's go ahead and go to the help, and let's actually find the method of it. So let's go to the help, and if we go to the UI devices class, you'll see the methods, and these are all the methods. And let's take a look at the one that we are in particular want to see, the key string. So the key string is going to return the string representing the key being pressed. And this is really great if you want to set up some of the rules. If we, let's say, press A button, then we want to execute some of the code. So let's actually try it out. And for the actual method that's going to hide and show our handle, it's pretty simple. Let's do this not through the class, but let's just demonstrate through the Python shell how we can get. So we know that in our class state, we get our scene viewer object, which represents this scene viewer window that our template is actually, scene viewer template is actually running on. So let's get it manually from here. So we have to do is who.ui paint tab of type, and then in parentheses paint tab type, you want to scene viewer. Press enter, you'll see now we're gonna get the object that represents our scene viewer scene viewer window, and then we just have to write. And if you go to the help, you will see that under the methods there's actually the show handle method. So show handle, inside we have to give it name, which for me it's a unique name for my handle, which is this. Paste inside, and then we have to give it whether it's true or false that we want to show it. So since you want now we want to hide it, just say it false, and that's it. You will see that now our handle is basically disappeared. And if you want to show it again, just press on true, and there it is. And now let's implement it inside our viewer state as a toggle with some of the hotkeys. So one thing to note that we can't really use every hotkey. So let's say I go inside my viewer state, and let's say I want to assign to the n. You see that n works because I do not have anything else assigned to the n. But let's say I want to use f. You'll see that now we have I have a f assigned to the fuse. So be wary about the hotkeys that you have actually free and able to assign to. So I mean, there would be another way for us to probably we want to, when we activate our viewer state, we maybe want to load our custom hotkey setup so that it clears them out. But for now, let's just keep it like that. And some of the probably the best way to know what are the most common ones to do is common free hotkeys would be something for the bend tool, that there's actually lots of hotkeys for it. So something like N, B, H, G, and F. So if we go to N, B, H, C, these are all the free ones, and it actually registers, and it doesn't actually exit our viewer state. So probably you want to set them up, the free hotkeys that you have when you're inside the viewer state. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to assign them to the N. So let's go ahead and do that. So first of all, let's assign our global variable that whether the handle is now showing or not. So let's say self.show handle. So when we start it, we want to make sure that it's true. And on key event, let's get our key object. So we know that it's in a quark. So let's say key state equals quarks. We know that it's in a UI event. So then it's in a, just like previous video, it's in a device. And then it's in a method called key string. And now let's print out the self.log and key state. Let's take a look at it. So we are basically just printing out the button that is being pressed right now. So this works like we want it to. And now all we have to do is get our setup for the keys. So what we want to do is make sure that if the handle is pressed, so basically want to change it something only if the N is pressed. So if key state equals and then the string of the N, then we want to do something. So first of all, we probably want to check if the handle, check the state of this handle right now. So we know that, let's copy it. If the show handle equals true, so let's say we enter it and we know that it's true. So you see that Python doesn't like the equals, so it says that it should be, I guess it is. It wants the is. Okay, so if the handle is true, all we have to do is we have to change it to the false. So next time when we run it, it would be false, and then we want to change it to the false also with the method that we just ran here. So now let's change our global variable to the false, and then we want to run our method we ran inside here. So just I'm just going to copy this last part, and I'm going to get the object. Obviously, we're not going to manually call it, we're just going to use the scene viewer object that we get automatically. Self.sceneViewer dot show handle, and we want to, since now it's true, we want to change it to the false. And very important thing is that we want to actually return it. So basically, if this is true, we basically do this code and then we return this function, this method immediately. We don't go any further in this code, because next up we're going to do the same thing only with the false. Let's type it out like that. Let's do it with false, because obviously if we do not have a return, it will do this true, and obviously in this if we are actually setting this to false, so this is ran, and then this is show handle is now false, and this means that this code is also going to, oh, that's my bad, this code is also going to be ran. So we want to make sure that once we do this, we want to return it and do not run any other code in it. So and then it is false, we want to set it to the true, and then we want to set it to the true also, like that, and then we want to return it. And that's it for this code. Let's take a look at it. So now you entered, I press N, you see, now I press N and we are basically toggling it. There is plenty of optimization we could do. First of all, we should probably not run the false also, because this true can be either false or either true or false. So all we have to do is press the write the else. So if it's not true, it's obviously going to be false. So then run this code. So we optimized it inside there. Another thing, that this code that we rewrite only with the different argument at the end, we should probably create another method for it. So let's say we create a method which we at the end return the, let's say we call it my show handle, and then the argument would be the only one, the false or true inside it, so that we do not rewrite the entirety of the code but just one time and then reference it in there. So there's plenty of optimization to be had in this code, but for me to show how this works doesn't really matter. So, but one thing I did wanted to show is, first of all, you will notice that actually it's going to register the last key that I actually pressed when I exited or entered the code, so the viewer state. So let's say I entered my viewer state, and for me to exit, let's say I pressed on my hotkeys that are on edges. So I'm inside my viewer state, I pressed it on edges. You will see that it's actually going to exit the viewer state, but it's also going to register as an F2 that I pressed it. So that's one thing to note. And now, since this video is already running to the 40 minutes, I wanted to show how can we reset our handle visibility once we actually exit our viewer state. So let's say I'm inside my viewer state and I toggle my viewer state, and I actually exited my viewer state when the handle is actually invisible. So exit it, enter it again, you will see that it's actually still invisible. That's because we have not run the code that would actually run it through. Basically what it would show the handle again, because none of these keystrokes are actually ran. So because we entered it and didn't press any keystroke, this method is not ran, and all of these are actually reset. So now this show handle is actually true again. And let's say I press N one time, you see that since this is true, it's going to run through here, and it's going to run only this one. So since that handle is true, it's going to run this true, and it's going to set show handle as false again. And only now that we press N again, it's going to show up. So now, since our global variable is false, it's going to run this code. So the only thing that we have to do is actually create our method for the on exit. So on exit, self and quarks, and the only thing we have to do is make sure that handle is going to be reset as visible. So just copy this and paste inside here. We now basically, when we're gonna exit our viewer state, we're going to reset the visibility of the handle when we enter it again. So this should be all good. So let's take a look at it. So enter it, press N, hide it, exit the viewer state, enter it again. You see, now we see it again every time. So we have basically created a loop that would reset our visibility of the handle of it every time. Well, that's it for this video. In the next videos, we will keep talking about the viewer states and how can we attach other handles to it, and also about the hotkeys and about the creation of the menus. How can we add for the menus? We can add some key bindings, hotkeys, and there's a bunch of other stuff in it. So that's should be pretty exciting. So see you next time and take care.